Michael Van Runkle here. Welcome to another retro review from Hot Cars. Today, I've got my hands on a 2006 Porsche Cayenne Turbo. Porsche fans hated the Cayenne when it debuted because it was sort of a continuation of the Boxster and the 911's water-cooled engine. Plus, it was a big, heavy SUV. But the Cayenne immediately became Porsche's best-selling model and has been the best-selling model every year since 2004. This Cayenne Turbo is fully loaded and it costs over $100,000 new. But now it's got over 115,000 miles on the clock, and depreciation has hit it super hard, which means you can pick up cars like this for pennies on the dollar. The question is it worth dealing with some of the known headaches? Let's go over it inside and out and see how it drives here in the Malibu Hills. But in the meantime, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. So you hop into this incredibly comfortable cabin, put the key in, fire up that twin turbo 4.5 liter V8. See the steering wheel adjusts to my last settings. I sit in here, strap in. The seats are super comfortable. And the first thing to do after saying okay, because the aftermarket sound system wants you to approve what it's up to, the first thing you gotta do, we're here in the Malibu Hills, so we need to fiddle with the suspension settings. I'm gonna drop it from normal ride height down to low because we're in the canyons, and I'm gonna select sport for the shocks. We're obviously gonna be in the base all-wheel drive system, no locking center diff, no locking rear diff, no low range. This thing, it's got 450 horsepower. It's got a natural torque split of 62-38 rear to front. You know, you could upgrade and get the Turbo S for the same model year, same body style. That bumped power up to 520 horsepower, which is completely absurd for 2004 to 2006, the first gen of the Porsche Cayenne. The Turbo S gets some extra power because it's allowed to have about 4 pounds more of boost. This thing, it says 0.8 bar, so mental math, that's like 11 pounds of boost, I think. But you're up here and you're on twisty roads and it's got plenty of power going up this hill. You can hear that grumble a little bit, but it's not too loud because this is, after all, a luxury SUV. It revs up pretty high. It's got an Aisin 6-speed automatic transmission that's probably one of the best automatics I've ever driven, but it is an automatic. You could get these things in a 6-speed manual, but those are super rare. They're almost as rare as the one level up from this turbo, which is pretty well optioned. You could get the advanced off-road package, which added also the rear locking differential to trucks that didn't have that already, plus electronically disconnecting front and rear sway bars. That's better than a Jeep Wrangler or Gladiator Rubicon, which only has the rear disconnecting sway bars. The crazy thing is how well this thing handles with it down low and with the sport shocks on. It feels like a sports car. You get that same sort of minimal body roll with a good amount of grip. I'm still getting used to the Tiptronic things that are your thumb. There's not paddle shifters, and I don't really like using this. But coming into a corner, you're not getting much roll, and this thing weighs 5,300 pounds. You would never know it unless you're in stop and go traffic and the truck is trying to just keep the RPMs low and have good fuel economy. I kind of like to think of this thing as like half of a Bugatti Veyron, because it's got the twin turbocharged V8 instead of a quad turbocharged W16, and it's putting out about a third of the power. But it's got room for the whole family and the dog and groceries and gear. So what's the story behind the Cayenne? It's sort of another one of these crazy projects that came out during the vague Ferdinand Piëch era. When they acquired Bugatti and came out with the Veyron, Volkswagen had absurd cars like the V10 TDI Touareg that was related to this, and the Phaeton with a W8 in there. I mean, they were just putting out these absolutely absurd cars that really haven't aged well, except the Cayenne, which undoubtedly saved Porsche. And the Cayenne led to the SUV luxury arena that is just a booming market these days. It's related to the Touareg, the Urus, and the Audi Q7 and now Q8. But the fact that the Cayenne is related to the Touareg and the Q7 does bring up the known reliability issues with this model, especially for the Turbo and Turbo S variants. The problem is, to pack all that power into the engine bay, it's really tight and everybody knows it. You've got a big V8, you've got turbos, it's not a lot of space, and the real problem is it leads to a lot of heat. So your cooling system starts to degrade quickly, your electronics start to degrade quickly, and then there's the problem of oil leaks from the turbos. This thing has a 26.9 gallon fuel tank, which I love. It just means fewer stops, but it also means a pretty steep little price tag every time you fill up a premium. In today's era of SUVs, I think we've lost a lot of the sport or the utility, and they tend to go one way or the other. You've got the Lamborghini Urus, which is serious sport. You've got a Toyota 4Runner, which has a 3.5 liter V6 and a 5-speed automatic. Today, this thing has a 6-speed automatic from 15 years ago. No sport there. This combines both, and it was one of the first to really do sporty and utilitarian. 7,700 pound tow rating. That's just silly. You don't need that, but I like to know I got it in case I want to haul some toys, or like an Airstream or something like that. You can see me sort of jouncing around a little bit like this, so if the road gets too rough, just switch it into the comfort shock absorbers, and all of a sudden, it's much more like floaty and a boat. So on long road trips, you put it in comfort. I find that the dampers are actually a little too soft in comfort for normal driving, and it sort of lulls you to sleep. So I usually keep it in normal and low when I'm driving around in town. Hit some dirt, pop it up into high. The way it drives truly is just amazing. It's smooth and comfortable, but you've got that feeling of power when you need it. The brakes are really good. They're not as big as that Turbo S, but they've got a lot of bite, and you can just keep pushing and they keep getting stronger. And then you power it out of the corner and you're just going fast all of a sudden. And then you can downshift with the Tiptronic as you go into a corner. We're on summer tires right now. You can hear the engine sounding pretty good with quad-tipped exhaust, twin turbo V8. And this is with the traction control on. I haven't even gotten into traction control off because that seems completely unnecessary. But hear that engine sing. We're taking corners pretty tight here, braking hard. Here's the kicker. I just bought this thing. I wasn't even sure if I was really gonna like it, but I saw it on Craigslist. The deal was too good to pass up. I went and drove it, and I was blown away. The seller did a ton of maintenance on this thing other than the airbag suspension rebuild, which included the ECU that controls it, the compressor, the charge tank, and the front airbags. He also has records showing that the center cooling hoses that go through sort of the hot V under the intake manifold have been replaced with the replacement metal units that Porsche put out, because so many of those plastic ones were just degrading and failing and leaking coolant right on the top of the engine right there. My plan for this Cayenne is to drive it and sort of turn it into something of an off-roader, maybe a light overlander and a storm chaser for the winter, because these things perform really well in the snow, or at least so I've heard, and they've got enough space, and it just gobbles up the highway miles. I've driven it probably 500 miles since I bought it, just trying to shake it out before I start doing any of the sort of little maintenance things that I want to catch up on. Like, you know, it's dirty and the interior trim is scratched up. I'm gonna put some knobby tires on it. I hope that doesn't sacrifice the ride quality and the driving dynamics in town. Yeah, you're gonna lose a little bit of power just because of the bigger diameter of the wheels and tires. Because it's got the airbag suspension system, it's also got an air compressor and a reservoir tank. That whole system was actually just completely rebuilt on this truck by the previous owner who was selling it, which is a hefty bill, so I'm glad he took care of that. but it means that there's also a port under the passenger seat, and it comes with a nice little tube, some hosing that allows you to fill up your tires and your collapsible spare if necessary if you go off-roading and you need to air down. That's just an awesome little detail. My other favorite thing about this, besides all the features that I've sort of gone over already, it's got a factory boost gauge for the twin turbo V8, which is so awesome. It goes from 0 to 0.4 to 0.8 bar. Again, I think that's like 11 or 12 PSI. And when you punch it, most of the time it barely wiggles, but when you really punch it like I'm about to do, it goes full boost. You don't want to do that too much because the turbos on this thing are a bit of a concern given the heat in the engine bay. Well, let's see how this thing does. Ooh, there's an Alpine A110. Yeah, we're going up to pretty high speeds here. Ooh. You can definitely feel that power. That's a big selling point. But again, it's the dynamics of the driving, not necessarily the all-out power, that really sold me on buying this truck. I'm gonna pull over here because that just about wraps it up for the day. I hope you learned something about this super SUV from the mid-2000s that totally revolutionized the SUV era and changed it into just the booming market that we know it today. Once again, thank you for watching, and as always, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out.